Yeah, so the trials that I've covered is only in 2019. So I've told all the speakers that we would cover only talks from 2019, considering that you're all updated and so that you try to comprehend to the most recent trials, which will be useful for your exams. So I've taken six journal articles from 2019 till date. So I think my cardiologist is caught in with procedure. So if he's delayed, I may cover few more trials, which I have kept it as a contingency. So the blood pressure trials, I think this is the most latest trial, the Wangs 2 trial. So there was a Wangs trial, which Wangs 1 trial, it was called only a Wangs trial. So which was done in post cardiac surgery. So this was done in oncology patients. So this was done by Italian group, UK and Brazilian group together. Then there is one study from US on hepatorenal syndrome. So regarding the blood pressure and the targets, and the sensor trial which came from the Thailand group in association with US group. So that was the blood pressure trials. And beta blockers in sepsis. So this was a meta-analysis because beta blockers is quite topical in sepsis. So this particular meta-analysis encompasses science about what is the role of beta blockers and what is our understanding of its benefit in sepsis and septic shock. Then we'll talk fluids is very bread and butter for our intensive care. So we'll talk about RIFS trial which came in 2019. So I think there was a recording, if you have seen my website, of Refresh trial which came before RIFS trial. So but that was in 2018. That's why I'm only talking about the RIFS trial which came in 2019. And obviously we all want to know some new molecules that have come in sepsis. So this is an investigative molecule that came from Germany, anticolium. So we'll talk about it and take home message. So this particular trial came in critical care medicine in December 2019. So it's as latest as it can get. So vasopressin versus norepinephrine for the management of septic shock in cancer patients. So this was a randomized controlled trial. So the question the authors had in mind was, we deal with a lot of oncology patients. In cancer patients with septic shock, whether vasopressin is superior to norepinephrine. So that's the question they intend to answer, because there have been multiple trials which I will take you through as a preamble. What is the science until now with regards to vasopressin. So this was a double-blind randomized controlled trial. So they included 250 patients. So the primary outcome was to look at 28-day mortality, and the secondary outcome they looked at 90-day mortality and the organ support free days. So these were the outcomes they looked at it. And they looked at SOFA at the end of 24 hours and 96 hours to see if SOFA got better after they started vasopressin in comparison to norepinephrine. So we need to understand why this study is important and why we should do a study on vasopressin. So the background is we have increasing admissions of cancer patients into ICU, and the literature quotes 20% of the ICU patients currently getting admitted may have some sort of a cancer on the background, and 10% may get admitted due to sepsis, and mortality in them is very high. So I think these are the meta-analysis you need to keep in mind. So there are these 4 meta-analysis, 2 from Canadian group, 1 from Austria, 1 from Italy, where they've done studies showing certain benefits in vasopressin. So the vasopressin in these studies showed reduced occurrence of atrial fibrillation when they used vasopressin in comparison to other vasopressors. And predominantly all these studies, what relentlessly have shown is some favor with regards to acute kidney injury and renal replacement therapy. So reduced occurrence of AKI and reduced read of RRT is something many of these studies have highlighted with the use of vasopressin, and reduced duration of vasopressors in comparison to norepinephrine or any other inotropic agent. So this was some of the benefits they found with vasopressin in these meta-analysis that has come from 2012 to 2018. So the results of this study, they had 250 patients, 125 in vasopressin group, and norepinephrine they had 125. So if you look at 28-day mortality, so there was no difference between vasopressin and norepinephrine. When they looked at 90-day mortality also, there was no difference between vasopressin and norepinephrine. So organ support free days, adverse events, and SOFA also, there was no difference. So this study was Wangs 2 trial was a negative study which did not show benefit with vasopressin. But this study is very important because after this study, they have included this number of patients and did a meta-analysis with the previous studies. So the conclusions at the end of this randomized control trial, they said vasopressin is not superior to norepinephrine when you have a cancer patient admitted with septic shock. But then they cleverly did a meta-analysis. So they did a meta-analysis with 7 previous randomized control trials and took this data and did a randomized control trial. There again they found this benefit. So this was a positive benefit they found. In vasopressin group, the need for renal replacement therapy was significantly less when compared to the control group. So this is what this paper tends to highlight. And even the previous meta-analysis you saw, the 4 meta-analysis which came, tends to highlight that there is a benefit of vasopressin in reducing the need for RRT or reduces the occurrence of AKI. And you can see the relative risk is 0.46 and confidence interval is statistically significant. So what are the previous studies? What are previous studies shown to us with regards to vasopressin? So the VAST study, I think all the trainees should know about these studies. The VAST study, which was a big study, came from the Canadian group. They did a post hoc analysis in patients with septic shock who are at a risk for AKI. They only took septic shock who are at risk for AKI. And this VAST study in post hoc analysis showed by use of vasopressin reduced the progression to acute kidney injury and reduced the mortality. So which is also an important sort of a message that this study is showing you, that with use of vasopressin there is a sort of reduction in the need for RRT and reduction in AKI. And this was another study which came from UK, Gordon et al., which was done in 409 septic shock patients. And even this study which came in from UK group showed vasopressin use reduced the occurrence need for renal replacement therapy. So there are good number of studies previously, and that is the reason this study had to be done to see if that same effect remains even in cancer patients. And the VANISH trial, which came as late as 2016, I think this came from the UK group, which came in JAMA. Again, they showed in this vasopressin versus norepinephrine in septic shock, there was no difference. So this is the sort of a background studies that we have in place to determine that there is some sort of a benefit with regards to a reduction in the acute kidney injury and the need for renal replacement therapy. So what about the VANCS-1 trial? So the VANCS-1 trial that came in 2017, this was done predominantly in post-cardiac surgery patients where they use vasopressin as opposed to norepinephrine. And even in their post-cardiac surgery, when they used vasopressin, it showed reduced occurrence of atrial fibrillation, which is very important in a post-cardiac surgery setting. And even in VANCS-1 trial, it showed reduced occurrence of AKI and reduced need of RRT and reduced hospital length of stay. So there is a science and sort of indicator to say that yes, use of vasopressin may have a benefit in reducing your AKI and reducing the need of RRT, and in cardiac surgery, reduction in AF, which is possibly very important for cardiac patients. So why is that science? How does, so now the question should arise in you, how is it that use of vasopressin has any benefit with AKI and RRT? So if you look at glomerular filtration, I think they have looked at the physiological aspect. The norepinephrine acts on the alpha-1 receptor of the afferent arteriole. So this is where your norepinephrine acts. So which means there is reduction in the blood supply. So this is at a physiological level. But vasopressin acts on the 1A receptor in the efferent arteriole, and that leads to increase in the glomerular filtration pressure and the filtration coefficient. So that's what tends to favor your improved renal outcome. So this is the sort of physiological explanation as to why we believe vasopressin may be beneficial with reduction of AKI. And even vasopressin has shown to reduce the activation of renin-angiotensin-aldosterone activation, which again has an implication on acute kidney injury. So this is the sort of physiological basis as to why vasopressin may be beneficial with if your whole concern is mitigating your AKI and the need for RRT. So that's a good study for us to keep in mind. So this is so if you have a patient where you consider that patient is at a high risk for AKI, or if you have a heart failure who's very dysrhythmic, maybe vasopressin may be superior to norepinephrine in achieving the endpoints if you believe in VANCS-1 trial. So let's move to the second trial. So this is a meta-analysis which came from the, I think the one country which is doing maximum meta-analysis as of now, as you all are aware, as China. But we know the beta blockers in sepsis has come and gone. So we need to look at the science behind beta blockers. So this came in 2020. So it's as latest as 2020. So prognosis of beta blocker in sepsis and septic shock. So this was a systematic review and meta-analysis. So what is the science of beta blockers? So we understand in patients who get admitted to ICU with sepsis, cardiac dysfunction can be present in about 50% of the patients. So that is why our whole perspective of hemodynamic management is shifting quite dramatically to doing echo upfront in sepsis patient, because 50% can have myocardial dysfunction, and this dysfunction happens due to a lot of catecholamine surge and relentless action of catecholamine on the myocardium. So that leads to myocardial dysfunction. And sepsis patients, if they have myocardial dysfunction, these studies have shown that it increases the mortality significantly. And what has the beta activation has shown is it causes increase in the myocardial contractility, increase in the oxygen consumption, and increase in the heart rate. All these are deleterious. So that's why we need some sort of blockade to mitigate this relentless myocardial contraction and increase in the oxygen consumption and reducing the heart rate. So are there previous studies to show benefit? So Burke et al. Has shown that propranolol usage improved prognosis in sepsis. So this came in 2014 article from US. And the Williams et al. In 2006, he showed that when the heart rate comes down to 15%, they had a favorable effect in sepsis. And this was a important study from the Italy where they showed patients who are already on beta blockers, if they developed sepsis, as compared to patients who developed sepsis who were not on beta blockers, patients who were on beta blockers had lower mortality. So that I think that science we understand. Someone who have been on beta blocker, they develop sepsis, their outcomes may be better than someone who has not been on beta blockers. And these are two studies which I think trainees should be aware of, one from Italy and one from Belgium, where they showed esmolol usage in septic shock lowered the mortality, especially when they targeted the heart rate to be kept less than 90. So esmolol usage was used as an IV infusion to keep the heart rate less than 90, and these two studies showed there was a mortality benefit. So this is the science of beta blockers in sepsis. So the results of this study, they did 6 studies with 363 patients. They looked at 28-day mortality was significantly less in the beta blocker group as compared to the control group, and heart rate also was significantly lower in the beta blocker group. And the lactate, total count, interleukin 6 and interleukin 10, they looked at these levels, there was no difference. So I think this is a very positive study that use of beta blockers has shown significantly to reduce the 28-day mortality. So if you look at the forest plot, so as you see the diamond has moved towards and there is statistical significance with the use of beta blocker. And when you, obviously your concern is in sepsis or septic shock, blood pressure is already low, so you would be worried whether it causes reduction in blood pressure. And they have looked at the blood pressure effect and they found that was not statistically significant because the dosage you use with esmolol did not make a lot of hemodynamic disturbance with beta blockers. And they looked at lactate because that also would be worrisome for you, that whether your tissue perfusion is affected. There also they did not show any sort of a deleterious effect with use of beta blocker. So very quickly, I think I'm going a little slow, I'll just finish the 2 more trials. So this was a study which came in 2019 August. It came in Journal of Critical Care, looking at high versus low mean arterial pressure in hepatorenal syndrome, randomized controlled trial. So in hepatorenal syndrome, it is a common condition. The annual incidence is 7.1%, prevalence is 13.45%. The reason it's important is mortality is very high, 20 to 80%. So there are studies done previously where they compared terlipersin versus norepinephrine. So these are 2 studies, one as latest as 2017 showed there's no difference. Either of them have same effect on hepatorenal syndrome. But this was a study from Denmark where they showed vasopressin use reduced mortality by 18% in hepatorenal syndrome. And the Acute Dialysis Quality Initiative recommends, which is a guideline, says that you have to maintain MAP 10 millimeter above the baseline MAP for 4 days to have a good outcome with hepatorenal syndrome. So this was a prospective randomized control trial, although it's a small number of patients, 18. So one group they maintained MAP more than 85 and the second one they maintained MAP 65 to 70. They looked at day 4 urine output, there's no difference between high MAP and low MAP group. And they looked at the delta change from day 4 to day 1 of MAP, so there was no difference. And they looked at day 4, day 1 delta change of serum creatinine, because you would sort of have in mind that use of vasopressors would improve the creatinine. So even that there was no difference by maintaining higher MAP, there was no benefit with creatinine, and mortality also there was no benefit. So limitations, there was no blinding, it was underpowered study. And what they found is the target MAP was maintained only 48% of the time, because it's very hard for you to maintain consistently MAP more than 85, because they'll be on infusions and MAP keeps fluctuating. Only 48% of the time they could maintain high MAP, and in the low MAP group only 27% of the time they could maintain in the range of 65 to 70. So these are some of the deficiencies of this study. So the conclusion the author made was in hepatorenal syndrome there's no difference between high MAP group and low MAP group. So it's possibly a myth that we have to maintain a high MAP, but at least avoid hypotension. I think that should be the message from this study. So the SENSOR trial, so this came in May 2019. So this came in American Journal of Respiratory and Critical Care Medicine, early use of norepinephrine in septic shock. We are moving from giving more fluids to starting early vasopressors. So the aim of the study was to look at early norepinephrine, whether it improved shock control in 6 hours. So it was a single center double blind randomized control trial. Primary outcome was to look at shock control. So the shock control they defined as having MAP more than 65 and having urine output more than or equal to 0.5 ml per kg per hour and having lactate reduction more than or equal to 10% in 6 hours. So these were the outcome measures. So there are two studies, one from Australia and China, which have shown that early norepinephrine has favorable mortality benefit in sepsis. So which means to say the whole EGDT science is out of the window now, because EGDT, we believe that we have to continue to give fluids until we don't achieve MAP, then we start norepinephrine. Now everything is in concurrence. So you start fluid resuscitation, now our fluid resuscitation targets also have come down, which you will see in RIFT trial. So which means you start fluid resuscitation, but don't wait start of vasopressors. I think that's what these studies are shown. So this was the results of the study: 320 patients, 155 in early norepinephrine group and 155 in standard group. So the median duration of vasopressor usage, as you see with early norepinephrine, was much lesser as compared to standard, which means you start early norepinephrine, your blood pressure control was much better, and shock control within 6 hours happened in 76.1% as compared to 48, which means you start early norepinephrine, shock control happens much better. That was statistically significant. And 28-day mortality, there was no difference. And what they found is pulmonary edema also was less where early norepinephrine was started, which means to say possibly you'll give less fluids and possibly you'll achieve better hemodynamic stability early on, which possibly mitigates your occurrence of pulmonary edema. And arrhythmias also was found to be less, because all of you understand that if they're hemodynamically unstable, the risk of arrhythmias is more. So you achieve quick hemodynamic stability with less fluids, I think your risk of arrhythmias. So it's a very important study, sensor trial, which has shown that start early norepinephrine, don't wait until you sort of flood the patient. So give fluids. No one is telling don't give fluids. Start fluid, but start vasopressors together so that you achieve better hemodynamic stability, and shock control is much better. So that was the limitation was there was no masking in this study of norepinephrine. It was underpowered for mortality, and it's a single center study. So the conclusion is early norepinephrine increases the shock control in 6 hours. Okay, so that's the message from this study. So then this is the fluid trial, so RIFT trial. So this came in July 2019. It's a very important for all of you because the fluids, there are multiple trials. You need to understand the science where we are heading. So this came in critical care medicine, prospective randomized control trial, done in 2 hospitals in USA between 2016 November and February 2018. So here they had 109 patients. So randomized between restrictive group in 55 patients and usual in 54. So restrictive group got fluids less than 60 ml per kg in 72 hours as a cumulative amount. The usual group, they could get any amount. So what they got was 61.1 ml per kg or 72 hours. Restrictive got 47.1 ml per kg. That was statistically significant. They looked at 30-day mortality, no difference between restrictive group and usual group. They looked at new organ failure, serious adverse events, and ICU and hospital length of stay. There was no difference between these 2 groups. But what they found was duration of mechanical ventilation was significantly less when they used less fluids as compared to the usual fluids. So that's also an important message, because you over resuscitate the patient or flood the patient. So obviously the risk for ALI or fluid overload is more, so the risk of ventilation is more. So this is an important message where there is no mortality difference. So which means to say by giving less fluids you are not killing the patient. So in fact the mortality is the same, but on the contrary you are probably reducing your risk of ALI or APO. So the conclusions the authors made was in restrictive regime. So there is a feasibility of giving less fluids, which is important in this day and age, because we understand cumulative positive balance leads to bad outcomes, but without increasing mortality, organ failure or serious adverse events. So it's a very important study. So we look into the science of it. So there's a new trial coming called Clover's trial. Okay, so because this particular RIFT study was not powered to mortality, the Clover's trial is powered to mortality. So I think this study results may come out this year. So we need to follow this up closely. So you need to compare with all the landmark studies that have happened before, because in RIFT trial they used 47.1 ml per kg, which is 2 to 3 fold less when you compare to previous landmark trials like reverse trial. They used, which is a EGDT sort of a trial, where they used 168 ml per kg. So you can see how there is a paradigm shift of using less fluids now as compared to what we were using before. And there were 3 landmark trials which came to dispute reverse trial, which was Process, Promise and Arise. And look at the fluids they have given. 180, Process used 108 to 130 ml per kg, Promise used 98 ml per kg, Arise used 108 to 109. So which means there is a huge shift in our intensive care practice, where we are not giving too much fluids now, and our targets are coming down because the science is moving towards less fluids, concurrent initiation of vasopressors and all the other things that goes hand in hand. So, and they looked at the pre-study analysis in the RIF study in 374 patients, and they found patients were getting 75.5 ml per kg in 72 hours. So what it means is, before they did the study, they looked at how in that hospitals they were giving fluids. So although it was less than the previous landmark studies, but still they were giving little more. So this they call it as a Hawthorne effect, which means because you have initiated a study, so you are trying to restrict more fluids. Otherwise, they were giving 75.5 ml per kg. So I have the time of cardiology, so I'll be taking a little more time. So the RIFS trial, the amount they used was 6,213 ml, which is still 23% less than the classic trial, which was a Danish study which again showed reduced occurrence of AKI by using restrictive fluid. So now the question should arise in your mind. So when you compare the restrictive fluid arm, which is 47.1 ml per kg, as compared to the usual, the cumulative difference was 1000 ml. Then the question should come whether the 1000 ml of fluid difference, did it really make a huge difference? Because this was a study, Semler et al., which came in NEJM 2018, comparing balanced solution versus the crystalloids, and they have shown even 1000 ml difference had a bearing on reducing the death and AKI. So which means to emphasize that fluids is dangerous. Fluids has to be given as a prescription, and you cannot sort of delineate the science when you are administering fluid. I think that is what all of you should understand, that you have to be very cautious in administering what amount of fluid and what fluid. So limitation was no blinding. So this was a Kaplan-Meier curve. So this is an interesting diagram which shows all these big circles you see is all the ARISE trial, PROMISE trial, PROCESS trial, and you can see these are the two new trials, which is the RIFS and the REFRESH trial. So which again shows that we are heavily moving from too much fluid to less fluid in this day and age. So that's about the fluid trial. So this is my probably the last article. The new molecule. So this came in 2019. It was a German study looking at a new molecule in sepsis, effect of physostigmine on recovery from septic shock following intra-abdominal infection. So physostigmine is a cheap molecule, so they have used it as an innovative molecule for sepsis. So the science behind it is, in sepsis there is an inflammatory activation of the vagus nerve, and that causes activation of parasympathetic nervous system, and activation of parasympathetic nervous system causes activation of cytokines, and that leads to production of tumor necrosis factor and interleukin, which causes hemodynamic instability. This is the science. And all this is mediated by these receptors called alpha-7 and acetylcholine on the macrophage. So this is the science, what happens. So physostigmine is known to suppress this activation of parasympathetic nervous system and mitigate this cytokine activation and tumor necrosis factor alpha release. So this is the science behind it. So the primary outcome of this study was to look at mean SOFA difference between treatment and 14 days. They included 20 patients. So the dose of physostigmine they used was 0.04 mg per kg to 1 mg per hour for 5 days in sepsis and septic shock. So what was the result? Small study, 20 patients, because an experimental study. So 10 patients in the physostigmine and 10 in placebo. So they looked at mean SOFA, there was no difference. Also, although there is some tendency to show a reduction of SOFA in physostigmine. And the norepinephrine usage was slightly less, but although not statistically significant in physostigmine group. They looked at vasopressor and mechanical ventilatory free days. There was no difference between these two groups. And adverse events were mild to moderate in physostigmine. So the conclusions they made was physostigmine salicylate, doing bigger studies, doing clinical study is feasible and it appears to be safe. So probably we need a bigger study to see whether this really translates into meaningful clinical outcomes. So that was the results of this study. So further studies are needed. So that's the end of my 6 studies. So the take home message from all these 6 studies are Wangs 2 trial. So I think the take home message for you is there is a role for vasopressin if your whole worry is to mitigate acute kidney injury and the need for RRT. If you have to subscribe to post hoc analysis of VANISH study, post hoc analysis of VAST study, and if you have to look at the Wangs 1 study, because in cardiac surgery also they showed reduction of AF and reduction of RRT. So I think there is some role if your worry is about AKI in septic shock, you can consider vasopressin. So if you read this full text of this article, they interestingly cite that I think the science is moving towards, see right now what we do, we use norepinephrine and we go to very high dose and then we think of a second drug. So the science is moving towards, maybe the authors in this suggest as a hypothesis that maybe it's good that you start 2 vasopressors upfront, like vasopressin because it acts on the efferent arteriole and norepinephrine, when your norepinephrine say is going to double digits. So suppose if it's going to maybe 10 ml, then maybe it's worthwhile considering adding vasopressin if it's going to 8 or 7 to 8 ml and you know it's going to hit 10 ml. Maybe it is worthwhile adding vasopressin based on these studies that what we have seen. And more so in cardiac patients, it is more arrhythmia friendly. So if you have a patient with say ACS and maybe you want to vasopressors, maybe good to consider both norepinephrine and vasopressin if we have to subscribe to this VANX2 trial. That's my way of looking at it. So beta blockers, I think looks like beta blockers has a very good role, and if you have to subscribe to this meta-analysis, it appears to be safe and it reduces 28-day mortality, good ventricular rate control, and there was no adverse effects on tissue perfusion. So beta blockers is something which we also use, especially if you have a huge sympathetic surge, very tachycardic patient, blood pressure is okay. I think small dose of beta blockers may be okay, but most studies, those 2 studies which I said, which came from Belgian group and Italian group, they used esmolol IV. But I don't know, we haven't used esmolol IV, but at least we can start off with propranolol because there was Gordon et al. Study which showed propranolol had a good benefit. So in hepatorenal syndrome, I think my hepatologist can probably give his comments. So there was, at least from this study, which came in 2019, there was no difference between high MAP and low MAP. But I think for all the trainees, the notion or the take-home message is we should not allow them to be hypotensive. So don't worry about high MAP, but don't allow them to be hypotensive. Sensor trial, I think the message is very clear. Don't wait till you keep on hitting them with fluids. Start early norepinephrine. It is shown to have better shock reversal. RIFS trial, very important study. So all of you can hear to my refresh study in the previous lecture. It's on my website. So refresh trial and RIFS trial came together. Both studies are telling us that use less fluids. You don't have to overload your fluids. I think we are moving towards less fluids. And physostigmine, for all the trainees, it's good to understand it's a new molecule because last time we got angiotensin 2. So I think this time we are talking about physostigmine. So thank you very much. So I'll end my talk with this quote, which is a nice quote. The problem with the world is that the intelligent people are full of doubt, while the stupid people are full of confidence. So I don't know, by knowing all this, whether we become intelligent and we always languish in doubt, or we are on the other way. So somewhere we need to have a middle path is what I would think is better, because you know a lot of things. So there's always probably I'm in the phase where we are suspicious about everything and anything in intensive care. So I think you can visit my website. So there are more than 100 lectures which are uploaded. So all these talks are getting recorded. So this also will get uploaded in maybe next 2 to 3 days. And thank you very much.